let's be honest, if you're listening to this deep dive, you've probably spent hours watching his updates. You know exactly what we were talking about.
Yep.
At the end of June and, early July of 2026, the zoo rolled out brand new feeding protocols for him.
Yes.
So our mission today is to take the official zoo announcements, the biological context of macaque development, and the absolute flood of fan reactions, and just figure out what is actually happening here.
And we should probably establish right up front that you and I are coming at this from two completely different perspectives.
We really are.
We both love Punch, obviously. We both want him to thrive. But we are totally divided on this update.
Yeah, because I am proudly planting my flag on the sentimental, protective side. To be honest, I look at what the zoo is doing to this young monkey, and every instinct in my body is just screaming to wrap him in bubble wrap.
Right.
I am vehemently against changing the old cuddly way he was being fed. I mean, it worked. He was happy, and it feels like we are just rushing him. But you are... You're championing this from the biological long-term welfare side. You are entirely pro-independence.
Absolutely I am. I think this new feeding method isn't just like a good idea. It is a biological imperative.
It's a biological imperative.
Yes. If they don't do this now, I really believe they are condemning him to a very confusing, isolated life.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really understand why this update is causing such a massive stir online, we kind of have to talk about what Punch's feeding routine used to look like.
Right, the historical context.
Exactly. Historically, the keepers at Ichikawa Zoo fed Punch entirely separately from the adult monkeys, and it was incredibly hands-on.
Yeah, because he was hand-reared. They had to, step into the role of the surrogate macaque mother.
And the footage of this was just heart-melting. Like, Punch would see the keepers coming, run over, climb straight up their legs, and just physically cling to their bodies while he ate.
He got that direct, one-on-one attention.
Right. And the sources point out that this wasn't the zoo just trying to make cute viral videos either. For a hand-reared primate, that physical contact, that clinging, is absolutely essential for early survival and bonding.
Oh, 100%.
A baby macaque's brain literally requires that tactile feedback to feel secure enough to eat and digest properly.
That's entirely correct. I mean, it's an evolutionary survival mechanism.
Yeah.
Think about it in the wild, right? If an infant macaque isn't clinging tightly to its mother's chest or back, it is highly vulnerable to predators. Or, honestly, simply falling from the canopy.
Wow, yeah, I didn't even think about the falling part.
Exactly. So the clinging reflex is practically hardwired into their nervous system from birth.
Which is why I'm so defensive of it. He needed that closeness. So when the zoo's official X account at Ichikawa_zoo posted that video on June 28th announcing a major change to this method to, integrate him into the group, it felt incredibly abrupt.
I can see why I would feel that way.
Just like that, the era of clinging during meals is over. It feels like taking a toddler to their very first day of kindergarten, dropping them in a room full of rowdy strangers, and just forcing them to leave their absolute favorite security blanket in the car. It just feels way too soon.
Well, what's fascinating here is that what we humans perceive as abrupt or, cruel, is often just the necessary non-negotiable rhythm of biological development.
But the videos were so sweet.
I know, I completely validate the cuteness of those old videos. Seeing him cling to a keeper is undeniably endearing. But we have to look past our human emotions at the biological reality here.
Okay.
Because while that clinging was absolutely vital for his early survival, there comes a tipping point where the security blanket literally becomes a developmental roadblock.
But he was getting fed. Like, he was safe. How on earth is feeling secure a roadblock?
Because he is a macaque, not a human infant.
Well, yeah.
By constantly clinging to humans for his meals, he was being entirely prevented from learning natural foraging behaviors.
Okay, fair.
But more importantly, he was being prevented from learning the complex social hierarchy of his own species. If he continued that way, he wouldn't develop into a fully functioning monkey.
What would happen then?
Like plateau. He'd become a permanent infant, entirely dependent on human caregivers. In primatology, if an animal imprints too heavily on humans past a certain developmental window, they lose the ability to recognize their own kind.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and the zoo realized they were rapidly approaching the end of that window.
I hear the words developmental window, but my heart still says we're just taking away his comfort.
I get that.
But, when I first read that June 28th announcement, and then the follow-up details around June 30th and July 1st, my immediate fear was that they were just locking him out of the keeper area.
Right, just shutting the door.
Yeah, I pictured them tossing him into the main enclosure and just saying, "Good luck, kid." But looking at the actual sources we have for this deep dive, the mechanics of this update are actually very different than what I initially feared.
They are drastically different.
Yeah.
The entire cornerstone of this new method is choice.
Choice.
Exactly. Punch is not being locked out of anywhere. He now has a choice of where to eat.
Okay.
He can choose to eat in the backyard, which is the separate holding area he is completely used to, or he can choose to eat out on Monkey Mountain with the rest of the troop.
Right. And the zoo made it very clear to the fans that some of the core pillars of his routine aren't changing. Like, the feeding schedule itself, which everyone tracks through the hashtag #GoHonMo, remains exactly the same.
That consistency is key.
And the specific zookeepers who act as his primary caregivers, they haven't changed either. Plus, the sources also mention that this wasn't actually out of the blue. Punch have actually been eating independently, meaning without physically clinging to a human, since February of 2026.
Yes, that was a huge milestone.
So this is just the next step. But, I mean, even knowing all those mechanics, I still have to push back on this idea of a choice.
Why is that?
Because, think about it. Giving a young, hand-reared monkey a choice between a perfectly safe holding area and a mountain full of unpredictable adult monkeys, is that just a polite, PR-friendly way of saying he's being forced to fend for himself? Like, if he gets hungry enough, he has to go out there, right?
Not at all. And that's a really critical distinction to make when we look at the behavioral science behind this. The zoo is utilizing a recognized technique called gradual desensitization.
Gradual desensitization.
Yeah. They aren't practicing some kind of primate sink-or-swim methodology where hunger is the primary motivator. The goal is to carefully reduce his reliance on his secure base.
Okay, explain that concept, the secure base.
So in behavioral psychology, which by the way applies remarkably well to higher primates, a secure base is a caregiver that an infant uses as a safe haven while exploring their environment.
Okay.
For Punch, the physical bodies of his keepers have been that base.
Right, the clinging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The zoo's strategy is to transition that sense of security from the keepers' bodies to the environment itself, starting with the backyard.
Oh, I see.
By giving him the option to eat in the backyard or take a few steps on the Monkey Mountain, they're allowing him to control the distance. He can observe the adults, he can take 2 steps out to grab a piece of food, and the split second he gets overwhelmed, the backyard is right there.
And the keepers are right there.
Yes, exactly.
So it's about him managing his own threshold for anxiety.
Exactly. It's about building his confidence over time, not forcing a sudden break. He is learning that he can venture out, interact, and then retreat safely.
Okay, well, the mechanics make more sense now. I'll give you that. He has options. The familiar keepers are still present. The GoHonMo schedule is a reliable constant. But we really need to shift the conversation to the actual stakes here. Why is the zoo taking this risk right now? Because let's be honest, even if it is gradual, introducing a hand-reared baby to a troop of adult macaques is inherently dangerous.
Oh, it is highly dangerous.
Yeah.
But the alternative is permanent isolation, which for a highly social species like a Japanese macaque is psychologically devastating. The zoo's ultimate goal, and they have been remarkably transparent about this in their communications, is long-term animal welfare, which means true group living.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, though, and I have a massive problem with this strategy. The sources specifically note that integrating into the troop means learning social dynamics, which includes typical macaque behaviors, and they explicitly define those behaviors as including rough play and strict hierarchy enforcement.
Yes.
So, as someone on Team Protective, I have to ask, aren't we risking Punch's physical safety just to check some biological box for natural behavior? I mean, rough play sounds like a very sanitized way of saying he's going to get beat up by adult monkeys.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to understand that macaque society is essentially a highly complex language.
A language?
Yes, and rough play and strict hierarchy enforcement. Those are the verbs and nouns of that language.
Okay, a language is great in theory, but when rough play means a dominant male is physically aggressive toward Punch, how is that acceptable zoo management? Like, at what point do the keepers intervene?
That's the hard part.
Right, because if learning the language means getting bitten because he missed a social cue, I just don't see how that's good welfare.
That is the exact tension zoo professionals have to navigate every single day. But to stick with the language metaphor, a submissive lip smack is a please, and a bared teeth stare is a back off. If Punch doesn't learn how to read those verbs and nouns right now, while he is young and still has what we call infant privilege in the troop, He will basically be speaking English in a room full of macaques speaking Japanese.
Wait, what is infant privilege?
Oh, it's fascinating. In many primate societies, very young infants are given a pass for bad behavior.
Really?
Yeah. Adult males will tolerate an infant climbing on them or, stealing a piece of food, things they would violently punish an older adolescent for doing.
Yeah.
Punch has a very small window of time left where the adults will tolerate his social clumsiness.
Oh, wow. So the clock is literally ticking.
The clock is absolutely ticking. Yeah. If he doesn't learn how to appropriately respond to a dominant stare now, or how to submit when an older macaque asserts hierarchy, what happens when he is a full-grown adult?
That's a scary thought.
It is. Because if a full-grown macaque misinterprets a dominant stare as an invitation to play, that doesn't result in rough play. That results in a lethal fight.
Oh my...
Or, best case scenario, he becomes completely ostracized from the troop, shivering on the periphery because he doesn't know how to engage in social grooming. By teaching him this language now, even if he takes a few bumps and bruises that look scary to our human eyes, they're ensuring he isn't killed or outcast 5 years down the line.
So the tough love from the keepers right now is quite literally the only way to keep him safe in the long run.
Exactly.
Like, if the keepers rush in to save him every single time an adult macaque gets a little rough, they're actually sabotaging his standing in the troop.
Precisely. Keepers cannot micromanage a macaque troop's hierarchy without entirely destabilizing it. It is short-term discomfort for the sake of his long-term survival.
Wow.
Because a monkey that thinks it's a human and expects to be treated like a human by other monkeys is just a tragedy waiting to happen.
Which brings us perfectly to the incredible visceral reaction this update is causing online.
Oh, the internet is having a field day.
Because you and I are essentially mirroring the massive divide happening across the internet right now. This late June, early July update has just exploded across fan pages, Reddit threads, and YouTube comment sections.
The level of parasocial attachment people have built with this single macaque is truly remarkable to witness.
It really is. You have people tracking his daily movements like he's an A-list celebrity, and the reactions to this feeding update are just completely polarized.
Totally split down the middle.
Yeah. On one side, you have these reaction videos and Reddit threads where people are calling the progress incredible. They are celebrating this developmental step. We saw actual quotes from fans celebrating that there is, quote, no more clinging to his two daddies.
Yeah.
They're genuinely thrilled he is growing up and doing monkey things.
Because they recognize the biological milestones he's hitting,
Right. But then you have a massive, highly vocal segment of the fan base that is incredibly concerned, and I am going to proudly defend that side because I heavily relate to the too soon crowd.
I figured you would.
I do. There are hundreds of comments from people who openly admit they miss seeing him cling to his two daddies. We, as an audience, watched this tiny, fragile creature survive, specifically because of the intense love and physical care of those keepers.
Right.
So it feels deeply jarring to see that physical bond severed. It feels cold, even if you intellectually know it's a gradual process.
It challenges the very nature of why a lot of people watch animal content online in the first place, I think.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? For you listening right now, put yourself in that scenario. How would you feel watching a live stream of Punch hovering at the edge of the backyard, looking out at the adult macaques, and then looking back at the keeper who refuses to pick him up?
It's tough to watch.
It is. Would you be in the chat cheering on his independence, or would you be typing out a frantic all-caps comment about how he clearly wants to be held and they need to pick him up immediately?
Well, this raises an important question, and honestly, maybe the most important question of this entire deep dive. How do we appropriately interact with nature through our screens? I absolutely validate the concerned fan's emotional reaction. It comes from a place of deep empathy.
Yeah.
You watch an animal grow from infancy. You invest in its daily routine. You get attached to its specific quirks. It is just human nature to want to protect something small and vulnerable.
Right.
But I firmly have to side with the incredible progress crowd here. Because as consumers of wildlife content, we have to redefine what it means to actually love an animal.
What do you mean by redefine it?
True love for a wild creature, even one living in a captive zoo environment, means supporting their independence, not their dependence on us. When we romanticize a baby monkey clinging to a human keeper, what we are often actually doing is romanticizing its helplessness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we like it because it makes the human look like a hero, and it makes the animal look like it needs us. But real progress isn't Punch hugging a zookeeper. Real progress is seeing Punch out on that mountain, getting lightly shoved by an older macaque, figuring out how to lip smack in response, and surviving as a fully realized member of his own species.
Oof. We are romanticizing its helplessness. That is a really tough pill to swallow for those of us who just enjoy logging on for our daily dose of cute animal bonding.
It is.
It forces you to look in the mirror a bit, but I think that perfectly summarizes the absolute core of this entire debate. Whether you listening are on my side, team sentimental, team protective, wishing we could just keep things the way they were when he was tiny, or if you are on the expert side, team independence, championing the cold, hard biology of troop dynamics, the shared common ground is undeniable.
Totally.
Everyone from the brilliant keepers at Ichikawa Zoo to the frantic Reddit commenters to the two of us sitting here right now just wants Punch to thrive.
Absolutely. No one wants him to fail. The internet debate is simply a disagreement over the methodology of how to get him to the finish line.
Exactly. We all want a happy ending for Punch, even if getting there means he has to leave the security blanket behind. But as we wrap up this deep dive into his brand new world, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to ponder.
Go for it.
We've talked a lot today about the psychology of the monkey, but what about the psychology of the audience? The next time you are scrolling through animal videos online and you catch yourself demanding that an exotic animal interact with humans in these incredibly heartwarming viral ways, are you sometimes guilty of prioritizing your own human desire for a cute, cuddly moment over that animal's actual biological need to develop into a wild, independent creature?
It's definitely a question worth asking ourselves every single time we hit that like button or share a video.
Something to chew on while we wait for the next update from Monkey Mountain.